The town of Willow Creek was nestled among rolling hills and dense forests, where life moved at a steady, unhurried pace. On the outskirts of the town, past the old mill and the weathered sign that read, "Welcome to Willow Creek," stood a house long forgotten by time. Its paint had faded, the shutters hung askew, and ivy clawed up its walls as if trying to pull it back into the earth. It was on the porch of this dilapidated house that a golden retriever appeared one morning, as if conjured by the whispers of the wind. No one saw him arrive, but by the time the sun reached its zenith, there he was, sitting upright and regal, his amber eyes fixed on the horizon. At first, people assumed he was a stray. Kids on their way to school pointed and whispered about the dog that seemed to be waiting for something, or someone. Adults paused briefly to observe him before carrying on with their routines. Willow Creek was no stranger to stray animals, after all. But as days turned into weeks, it became clear that this golden retriever was unlike any other. He showed no interest in following passersby or exploring the town. He remained steadfast on the porch, watching the road as if expecting a car to pull up at any moment. The locals began calling him Hero, a name that carried both affection and intrigue. One such local was Dona Clara, an elderly woman who lived across the street. Her life had been a quiet one since her husband passed away years ago. Clara was the first to approach Hero, bringing a bowl of water and leftover scraps. The dog accepted her offerings graciously, but never moved from his post. "He's waiting," Clara whispered to herself one evening as she watched Hero from her window. There was a determination in the dog's gaze, a silent promise that held a gravity she couldn't explain. Before long, Hero became a symbol of resilience for the town. Strangers who passed through stopped to snap pictures or leave small tokens of appreciation. Children brought him treats. Teenagers sat on the sidewalk to keep him company. Yet Hero never wavered. His eyes always returned to the road. One evening, during a rare conversation at the local diner, Clara shared her observations with Samuel, the town's postman, and Emma, a young schoolteacher new to Willow Creek. "There's a story in those eyes," Clara said, stirring her coffee absently. "He's not just waiting. He's keeping a promise." "To who?" Emma asked, intrigued. "That's the mystery," Samuel added, glancing out the window as if Hero might suddenly reveal his secrets. As the seasons changed, Hero endured the biting cold of winter and the oppressive heat of summer. His golden coat thinned with age, and his movements became slower, but his resolve never faltered. And then, after 4 years of unwavering patience, the unexpected happened. The first sign of change came on an unremarkable Thursday afternoon. A low rumble grew in the distance, faint at first, but it soon became the unmistakable growl of an engine. Hero, who had been lying with his head resting on his paws, suddenly lifted it. His ears perked, his body rigid with attention. For the first time in 4 years, he moved with urgency. The car that emerged from the horizon was unlike any the locals had seen. A black SUV with sleek, unfamiliar contours rolled slowly into view, its tinted windows reflecting the afternoon sun. Every eye in the vicinity turned to watch as it approached the abandoned house. Dona Clara stepped onto her porch, a basket of freshly baked rolls forgotten in her hands. Across the street, Samuel halted his bike mid-pedal, his mailbag swinging on one shoulder. Hero stood, tail wagging furiously, his golden coat shimmering in the light. The SUV came to a stop, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the door opened, and a man stepped out, a tall figure with broad shoulders and a cautious gaze. His face was rugged, marked by time and perhaps hardship, and his hair was streaked with gray. The man paused when he saw Hero, his expression shifting from curiosity to something far deeper, recognition. "Buddy," the man whispered, his voice carrying across the stillness. Hero let out a high-pitched whine and bolted toward the man, his movements clumsy but filled with uncontainable joy. The man knelt, and the golden retriever threw himself against him, licking his face and wagging his tail so fiercely it seemed it might detach. The people of Willow Creek stood frozen, their collective breath caught in their throats. Clara, unable to restrain herself, crossed the street. "Excuse me, sir," she began, her voice gentle but firm. "Who are you?" And how do you know Hiro? The man looked up, cradling the dog's face in his hands. His eyes glistened with unshed tears. Hiro? He repeated, confused. His name is Buddy. He was my dog 4 years ago. I thought I lost him forever. The crowd murmured in astonishment. Clara stepped closer, her heart pounding. What happened? She pressed. The man sighed, standing and keeping a hand on Hiro's head. My name's Alex Carter. 4 years ago, I lived here with my family. One night, there was a fire, a bad one. The house was destroyed, and we barely made it out. In the chaos, Buddy disappeared. We searched for weeks, but we thought... His voice broke. We thought he didn't survive. The revelation hit the crowd like a tidal wave. Clara felt her knees weaken, and Emma, who had joined her, gasped audibly. But why would he stay here all these years? Samuel asked from the sidelines. Hiro, Buddy, answered in his own way, trotting back to the porch and sitting once again, his gaze fixed on Alex. The man seemed to understand. He was waiting for us, Alex murmured, his voice thick with emotion. He never gave up. The crowd buzzed with questions, but Clara noticed something strange. Alex wasn't alone. In the back seat of the SUV, a figure moved, a woman, pale and tired-looking, holding a small child who clung to her neck. They stepped out, the woman's eyes scanning the house with apprehension. Is it safe? She asked, her voice trembling. Alex nodded. Yes, Emily. It's over now. We're home. But there was something in Emily's gaze that unsettled Clara. It wasn't relief or joy, it was fear. And it made her wonder. What kind of past had this family fled? And had it truly stayed in the past? The revelation of Hiro's true identity left the town of Willow Creek buzzing with curiosity and admiration. Yet, as the initial wave of excitement ebbed, a quiet unease settled over Clara. Something about Alex Carter and his family didn't quite add up. Over the next few days, Alex and his family moved into the abandoned house, determined to rebuild the life they had left behind. The locals, charmed by Hiro's story, offered their help. Samuel delivered supplies without charge, Emma organized a small group of volunteers to clean the yard, and Clara baked casseroles to ensure the family had warm meals. Despite their gratitude, Alex and Emily kept a noticeable distance. Hiro, however, was the same as ever. He seemed rejuvenated by the reunion, his energy belying his years. Yet Clara noticed that the dog remained unusually alert, his ears twitching at every sound, his eyes scanning the horizon even when he rested. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the first stars began to twinkle, Clara sat on her porch, watching the faint glow of lights from the Carter house. She thought about the fire Alex had mentioned, how it had seemingly uprooted their lives and scattered them to the winds. But there were gaps in the story, gaps that made her restless. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on her door. Startled, Clara stood and opened it to find Emily standing there, clutching a fraying shawl around her shoulders. Emily, Clara said, surprised. Is everything all right? The younger woman hesitated, her eyes darting to the darkened street behind her. Can I come in? Clara stepped aside, motioning for her to enter. Once inside, Emily sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling as she accepted a cup of tea. Clara, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. You're kind to help us. I wanted to thank you. There's no need to thank me, Clara replied gently. The town has taken to your family, especially after what Hiro, Buddy, did for you. At the mention of Hiro, Emily's expression darkened. He's a good dog. Too good, maybe. What do you mean? Emily stared into her cup, as if searching for courage in the swirling tea. Alex didn't tell you everything, she admitted. The fire, it wasn't an accident. And it wasn't just a fire. Clara's breath caught in her throat. What are you saying? Emily looked up, her eyes brimming with fear. We were running from someone dangerous. And I'm afraid they might have found us. Before Clara could respond, a sharp bark pierced the air, followed by Hiro's low, guttural growl. The sound sent a chill down her spine. Clara rushed to the window and saw Hiro standing in the middle of the road, his body rigid, his gaze fixed on a dark figure in the distance. Who is that? Clara whispered, her voice trembling. Emily joined her, her face pale as she whispered, "It's him." Hiro's bark grew louder, more urgent, as the figure stepped closer, their features obscured by the shadows. Alex burst out of the house, a flashlight in hand, and shouted, "Who's there?" The figure froze, then slowly raised their hands in mock surrender. A smooth, chilling voice called out, "Easy, Alex. It's just me." The flashlight revealed a man with sharp features and a predatory smile. His tailored suit and polished shoes seemed absurdly out of place in Willow Creek. "Lawrence," Alex spat, his voice dripping with venom. "Is that any way to greet an old friend?" The man replied, his smile never wavering. His eyes flicked to Hiro, who stood protectively in front of Alex. "And there's the famous dog. Still loyal, I see." Clara felt her knees go weak as she watched the confrontation. She didn't know who this Lawrence was, but the air around him crackled with danger. "Leave," Alex commanded, stepping forward. "We have nothing to do with you anymore." Lawrence chuckled softly. "Oh, Alex, you know it's not that simple." Hiro barked again, louder this time, and Lawrence took a deliberate step back. His gaze lingered on the dog, a flicker of unease crossing his face. "Call him off," Lawrence said, his tone sharp. "Hiro stays," Alex replied, his voice steady. For a moment, the tension was unbearable. Then, with a cold smile, Lawrence adjusted his suit and said, "I'll be seeing you, Alex. Sooner than you think." He turned and walked back into the shadows, disappearing as swiftly as he had appeared. Hiro growled until the figure was completely out of sight, then turned to Alex, his eyes filled with a mix of vigilance and concern. Emily sagged against the window frame, tears streaming down her face. "He found us," she whispered. Clara gripped her shoulder. "Who is he, Emily? And what does he want?" Emily hesitated, then said two words that sent a shiver down Clara's spine. "Our lives." The tension that hung over Willow Creek after Lawrence's arrival was palpable. Though he had disappeared into the night, his presence lingered like a storm cloud. Hiro never strayed far from Alex or Emily, his golden eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Clara, shaken but resolute, was determined to uncover the truth about the Carters and their connection to the sinister man. The next morning, Clara approached Alex while he worked on repairing the house's sagging porch. Hiro sat beside him, watching the road. "Alex," Clara said, clutching her shawl against the crisp morning air. "Who is Lawrence, and why is he after your family?" Alex hesitated, setting down his hammer. His shoulders sagged under an invisible weight. "Lawrence isn't just a man," he began. "He's a predator. A man who thrives on control, on power, on fear. Years ago, I made a mistake, a deal I thought would help my family. But Lawrence doesn't forgive debts, and he doesn't let anyone walk away." Clara's heart sank. "What kind of deal?" Alex glanced at Hiro, who had shifted his attention to them, ears pricked. "I was desperate. Our daughter, Lily, was sick. We didn't have insurance, and the bills were piling up. Lawrence offered to cover everything, no questions asked. I didn't know the cost until it was too late." "What was the cost?" Clara asked softly. "Everything," Alex said, his voice trembling. "He expected loyalty, complete, unquestioning loyalty. When I refused to do his bidding, he came after us. The fire wasn't an accident, it was a warning. We escaped, but Hiro stayed behind to protect us. I didn't know he survived until now." Clara's stomach churned as the pieces of the story fell into place. "And now he's found you." Alex nodded grimly. "Lawrence doesn't just want revenge. He wants to make an example of us, to show others what happens when you cross him. Then we need to fight back," Clara said firmly. Alex shook his head. "You don't know what he's capable of." Before Clara could respond, Hiro's sharp bark interrupted them. The golden retriever stood at the edge of the porch, his gaze fixed on a car parked down the street. It was empty, but its tinted windows and out-of-state plates were enough to set Alex on edge. "We need to get inside," Alex said urgently, grabbing Clara's arm. Inside the house, Emily was cradling Lily, who had fallen asleep on the couch. Alex explained what had happened outside, his voice low and tense. Hero lay near the door, his ears twitching at every sound. "We can't stay here," Emily said, her voice cracking. "He'll never stop." "We don't have a choice," Alex replied. "Running didn't work before. He found us anyway." Clara, who had been silently observing the family's interaction, spoke up. "What if you don't have to run or fight alone? This town cares about Hero, about all of you. Maybe together, we can stand up to him." Alex looked skeptical, but Emily's face softened. "You do that? For us?" "For Hero," Clara said, her voice firm. "And for what's right." That evening, Clara called a meeting at the diner. Samuel, Emma, and several other townsfolk gathered, their curiosity quickly turning to concern as Clara shared the Carters' plight. At first, there was hesitation. Lawrence sounded like a man no one wanted to cross. But as Clara spoke of Hero's loyalty and the family's struggles, the townsfolk began to rally. "We can't let this man terrorize our town," Samuel said, his voice filled with conviction. "Hero waited 4 years for them. The least we can do is stand by him now." Plans began to form. Neighbors would keep watch on the streets, local law enforcement, though limited in resources, would be alerted, and everyone agreed to keep an eye on the Carter family. As the meeting ended, Clara felt a renewed sense of hope. The town wasn't just a collection of houses and people. It was a community bound by shared values and a common goal. Later that night, as Clara sat on her porch, she saw Hero standing at the edge of the Carters' property, staring into the dark. She walked over and crouched beside him, resting a hand on his golden fur. "Don't worry, boy," she whispered. "We're not letting him win." Hero turned to her, his eyes filled with a quiet determination that mirrored her own. Together, they watched the night, ready for whatever came next. Willow Creek awoke to a sense of purpose unlike anything it had felt in years. News of the Carters' plight and Hero's steadfast loyalty had spread like wildfire. From shopkeepers to farmers, everyone seemed determined to protect the family that had found its way back to the town. Alex, though reluctant to draw attention, accepted the help. The sight of townsfolk patrolling the streets, stationing themselves at strategic corners, and even fortifying the Carter house gave him a cautious sense of hope. Hero remained vigilant, his presence a steadying force amidst the chaos. Among the many who volunteered, Emma took a particular interest in the Carters. She spent her evenings reading to Lily, her soft voice calming the little girl's fears. Samuel, who had a knack for mechanics, installed motion sensor lights around the property. Even Clara, despite her age, helped organize shifts for those keeping watch. But while the town rallied, the Carters' past continued to cast a long shadow. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that Lawrence's next move was imminent. Late one afternoon, Clara decided to visit the Carters, a basket of cookies in hand. She knocked on the newly repaired door and was greeted by Hero, who wagged his tail but immediately resumed his post near the window. "Come in," Alex said, stepping aside. His face was drawn, the lines of stress etched deeper with each passing day. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Emily was pacing the living room, her arms crossed. Lily played quietly in the corner, her small frame dwarfed by a blanket. Clara set the basket down on the table. "I wanted to check on you all," she said, "and to see if there's anything more we can do." Emily paused, her eyes darting to Alex. "Actually, Clara, there's something you should know." "Emily," Alex warned, his tone sharp. "No, Alex," Emily insisted. "She deserves to know." "They all do." Clara frowned. "Know what?" Emily took a deep breath. "Lawrence isn't just a man. He's part of something much bigger, a network. People like him don't act alone. If he's here, others won't be far behind." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. "A network? Of what?" "Organized crime," Alex said reluctantly. "Extortion, smuggling, you name it. Lawrence is one of their enforcers." "And you?" Clara asked, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I was a pawn," Alex admitted, "a desperate man who thought he could outsmart them. I tried to walk away, and this is the result." The weight of the revelation pressed down on Clara, but before she could respond, Hero growled. A low, menacing sound that sent shivers down her spine. Alex rushed to the window, his expression hardening. Someone's coming. A black sedan rolled up the dirt path, its tires kicking up dust. Clara's breath caught as she recognized the same sleek, ominous design as Lawrence's SUV. This time, two men emerged, both wearing dark suits that seemed out of place in the quaint town. Alex opened the door before they could knock, Hero standing by his side like a sentinel. "You're not welcome here," Alex said, his voice cold. One of the men smirked. "Relax, Carter. We're just here to deliver a message, then deliver it and leave." The second man stepped forward, his expression devoid of humor. "Lawrence doesn't like to be ignored. You've had your warning. If you don't settle things soon, it won't just be your family paying the price." Hero barked, stepping closer, his teeth bared. The men exchanged uneasy glances. "Call off your dog," the first man snapped. Alex folded his arms. "He's not going anywhere." The men retreated, but their parting words hung in the air like a threat. "You've got until the end of the week, Carter. After that, we won't be so polite." That night, Alex gathered the townsfolk at Clara's house. His story, once shared, silenced the room. The danger was greater than anyone had imagined. But instead of fear, there was resolve. "We can't let them take over," Samuel said, slamming his fist on the table. "If we back down now, they'll think they can do this to anyone." "We stand with you, Alex," Emma added, her voice steady. "All of us." As plans took shape, Clara noticed Hero lying near the door, his gaze fixed on the horizon. She knelt beside him, running a hand through his fur. "You're the heart of this town now, boy," she whispered. "And we'll fight for you, just like you fought for them." The week passed in a blur of preparation. The townsfolk worked tirelessly, fortifying the Carters' home and setting up a network of lookouts. By the time Friday arrived, Willow Creek was ready, or as ready as it could be. As the sun dipped below the hills, casting long shadows over the town, Hero took his place on the porch, his eyes glowing with determination. Clara joined him, a rifle resting against the doorframe. "Let them come," she murmured. "We'll be ready." The night fell heavy over Willow Creek, shrouding the town in a tense, anticipatory silence. The Carters' house, now a makeshift fortress, stood as a beacon of defiance. Hero sat at his usual post on the porch, his golden coat glinting faintly in the moonlight. His body was taut with vigilance, his ears flicking at every sound. Inside the house, Alex paced the living room while Clara, Samuel, and Emma watched him. Emily sat quietly in the corner, clutching Lily close to her chest. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken fears. "Do you think they'll come?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They'll come," Alex replied grimly. "It's not a matter of if, but when." Hero's sudden bark shattered the stillness. He leaped to his feet, growling low in his throat as his gaze locked on the dark road ahead. The others rushed to the windows, hearts pounding. In the distance, the faint glow of headlights appeared, growing brighter with each passing second. "They're here," Alex said, his jaw tightening. The convoy that rolled into view was larger than anyone had expected. 3 black SUVs, their engines purring ominously. They came to a stop just beyond the Carter property, and one by one, the doors opened. Men in suits stepped out, their movements deliberate, their expressions cold. Lawrence was the last to emerge, his predatory smile visible even in the dim light. "Well, Alex," Lawrence called out, his voice carrying across the yard. "You've gone to a lot of trouble to make this little stand. I'm almost impressed." Alex stepped onto the porch, flanked by Samuel and Hero. Behind him, the townsfolk gathered, their presence a silent show of unity. Lawrence's gaze flicked over the crowd, his smile widening. "Is this supposed to intimidate me?" he asked mockingly. "A ragtag group of farmers and retirees? You don't belong here, Lawrence," Clara said, stepping forward. Her voice, though aged, was firm. "This town doesn't bow to bullies." Lawrence chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "You're brave, old woman. I'll give you that. But bravery doesn't stop consequences." At his signal, his men began to fan out, their hands resting on the weapons tucked into their jackets. Hero growled, his fur bristling. The tension in the air was electric, as if the slightest movement could ignite a storm. "You're not getting what you want," Alex said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his insides. "You've taken enough from us. It ends here." Lawrence's smile faltered. "You don't get to decide that, Alex." "I do." Before anyone could react, Hero sprang forward, barking fiercely. He stopped just short of the men, his presence a barrier they couldn't ignore. One of them reached for his weapon, but Lawrence raised a hand. "Don't," he ordered sharply. "Not yet." Hero's growls deepened, his body a coiled spring ready to strike. Lawrence eyed the dog with a mixture of irritation and unease. "Call him off," Lawrence demanded. "Now." Alex shook his head. "Hero stays. And so do we." The defiance in Alex's voice sparked something in the crowd. Samuel stepped forward, holding his wrench like a weapon. Emma, though visibly frightened, stood beside him with a flashlight in hand. Clara raised her rifle, her eyes cold and steady. "You're outnumbered," Clara said. "And if you think we'll just stand by and let you take this family, you're sorely mistaken." For a moment, Lawrence seemed to weigh his options. Then he laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Fine," he said, signaling to his men. "Have it your way." But this isn't over. With that, Lawrence and his entourage retreated to their vehicles. The engines roared to life, and one by one, the SUVs disappeared into the night. The crowd watched in silence, unsure if they had truly won or merely postponed the inevitable. The tension lingered long after the headlights vanished. Slowly, the townsfolk began to disperse, murmuring words of comfort and solidarity as they returned to their homes. Inside the Carter house, Alex sank into a chair, his body trembling with relief and exhaustion. "We did it," Emily said, her voice barely audible. "We stood up to them." "For now," Alex replied. "But Lawrence doesn't give up easily." Clara placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "He may come back, but so will we. This town won't let you face him alone." Hero padded over to Alex, resting his head on his lap. Alex scratched behind the dog's ears, his eyes filling with gratitude. "We owe him everything," Alex said softly. "Without Hero, we wouldn't have made it this far. And we're not done yet," Clara added, her voice firm. "This isn't just about your family anymore. It's about all of us." As the first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, Hero returned to his spot on the porch, his watchful eyes scanning the road. He knew the battle wasn't over, but he also knew he wasn't alone. Dawn broke over Willow Creek, casting its golden light over a town that had stood defiant in the face of danger. Yet beneath the surface, unease lingered. The people of Willow Creek had sent Lawrence and his men away, but the threat of their return hung in the air like a storm cloud. For Hero, the morning was no different from any other. He resumed his post on the porch, his amber eyes scanning the horizon. Clara watched him from her window, her heart heavy. The dog's steadfast loyalty was inspiring, but it also carried the weight of an unspoken truth. The battle wasn't over. At the Carter house, tensions were running high. Alex paced the living room, his brow furrowed as he spoke to Emily. "They'll be back," he said. "And next time, they won't just threaten us." "We can't keep putting the town in danger," Emily replied, her voice trembling. "Maybe it's time we left for good." "And go where?" Alex snapped. "We've been running for years. Hero waited here for us. For this, we can't just leave him behind. Hero's been through enough." Emily shot back, tears brimming in her eyes. "We can't ask him to keep fighting our battles." Their argument was interrupted by a knock at the door. Clara entered, her expression grave. "Sorry to intrude," she said, "but I think we need to talk." Clara shared what she had overheard from Samuel that morning. The postman had spotted unfamiliar vehicles circling the outskirts of town, cars with dark windows and slow, deliberate movements. "They're watching us," Clara said, "and they're waiting for the right moment to strike." Alex clenched his fists. "We have to be ready. But we can't fight them forever," Emily said, her voice breaking. "They'll wear us down and then—" Clara placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. "We're stronger than you think. But you're right. We can't do this alone." "What do you mean?" Alex asked. Clara hesitated, then said, I've been in touch with someone. An old friend who used to work in law enforcement. He might be able to help. Alex and Emily exchanged a wary glance. Can we trust him? Alex asked. Clara nodded. He's retired now, but he has connections. If anyone can get Lawrence off your back, it's him. That evening, Clara's contact arrived. Detective Marcus Hayes, a grizzled man with a weathered face and a sharp gaze, stepped out of his car. Despite his casual attire, there was an air of authority about him that immediately commanded respect. Clara, he greeted, his voice deep and steady. You've got yourself quite a situation here. You don't know the half of it, Clara replied, leading him into the house. Inside, Marcus listened as Alex recounted his story, from the desperate deal with Lawrence to the fire that had upended their lives. When Alex finished, Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. This Lawrence character sounds like bad news, Marcus said, but he's not invincible. These guys operate on fear and control. If we can expose him, we can cut him off at the knees. Expose him how? Alex asked. Evidence, Marcus replied. Anything that ties him to his crimes. It's risky, but it's your best shot. The plan Marcus proposed was bold and dangerous. Alex would act as bait, drawing Lawrence into a confrontation while Marcus and a few trusted allies documented everything. The goal was to capture Lawrence on tape, incriminating himself in a way that could be used against him. It's a gamble, Marcus admitted, but it might be the only way to put an end to this. Hero, who had been lying by the door, lifted his head at Marcus's words. The detective smiled faintly. Looks like your dog's in. Are you? Alex glanced at Hero, then at his family. He knew the risks, but he also knew that running wasn't an option anymore. I'm in, Alex said firmly. But if this goes wrong, it won't, Marcus interrupted. Not if we stick to the plan. The following days were a flurry of preparation. Marcus worked closely with Alex and the townsfolk, setting up hidden cameras and coordinating a network of lookouts. Clara took charge of keeping morale high, ensuring that everyone knew their role. Through it all, Hero remained a constant presence, his unwavering loyalty a source of strength for everyone. He seemed to sense the importance of what was happening, his actions purposeful and deliberate. As the day of the confrontation approached, the tension in Willow Creek reached a boiling point. The townsfolk were nervous but determined, their bond stronger than ever. And then, on the night of the plan meeting, the black SUVs returned. The night of the confrontation arrived, and Willow Creek held its collective breath. The air was thick with anticipation and fear as Lawrence's SUVs rolled up to the Carter's house. Hidden cameras blinked faintly from their concealed positions, and Marcus Hayes crouched in the shadows with his recording equipment, ready to capture every incriminating word. Alex stood on the porch, Hero by his side. The golden retriever's growl was low and steady, a warning to the intruders. Behind Alex, Clara, Samuel, Emma, and a few other townsfolk waited, their presence a silent show of unity. Lawrence stepped out of the lead SUV, his men fanning out behind him. He approached the house with his usual predatory swagger, his eyes narrowing as they scanned the crowd. Alex, he called out, his voice dripping with mock warmth. You've been busy. Just trying to protect my family, Alex replied, his tone steady. Lawrence smirked. And you think these people can protect you? That's adorable. This ends tonight, Alex said firmly. I'm done running. Done hiding. Lawrence's smile faltered for a brief moment, replaced by a flicker of irritation. You think you have a choice in this? He said, stepping closer. You belong to me, Alex. You and your family. That's the deal. Not anymore, Alex replied. You'll have to go through all of us. Lawrence's gaze swept over the crowd, his smirk returning. Fine, if that's how you want to play it. Lawrence signaled to his men, who began to move forward. Hero barked furiously, stepping in front of Alex, his teeth bared. The standoff teetered on the edge of chaos when Marcus stepped out of the shadows, a small recorder held aloft. That's enough, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the tension. I've got everything I need. Lawrence froze, his eyes narrowing dangerously. Who the hell are you? Detective Marcus Hayes, Marcus replied, retired. but still enough of a pain in the ass to ruin your night? Lawrence's men hesitated, their hands hovering near their weapons. Marcus continued, his tone calm but firm. This whole conversation has been recorded. Every threat, every admission. You've just handed me enough to bury you and your operation. For the first time, Lawrence looked genuinely rattled. You think you can just walk away from this? He snarled. No, Marcus replied, but you can. Leave now, and I'll consider letting the authorities handle this. Push your luck and you'll regret it. Hero barked again, as if echoing the sentiment. Lawrence glared at the dog, then at Marcus, and finally at Alex. This isn't over, Lawrence spat. You've made a mistake, Alex. All of you have. With a curt signal, he retreated to his SUV, his men following reluctantly. The vehicles roared to life and sped away, disappearing into the night. As the tail lights vanished, the crowd erupted into cheers and sighs of relief. Alex collapsed onto the porch, his hands trembling as the adrenaline drained from his body. Emily rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face. You did it, she whispered. We did it. Marcus approached, a faint smile on his lips. It's not over yet, he said. I'll take this evidence to the state authorities. Lawrence and his men will have bigger problems than Willow Creek soon enough. Clara placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. You're safe now, she said. And so is this town. Hero, sensing the change in the air, relaxed for the first time that night. He trotted over to Alex, resting his head on his lap. Alex stroked his fur, his eyes brimming with gratitude. You saved us, boy, Alex said softly. You always do. In the weeks that followed, Willow Creek began to return to its quiet, peaceful rhythm. Marcus stayed in town long enough to ensure that the evidence was securely delivered to the authorities. News of Lawrence's arrest and the dismantling of his operation spread quickly, bringing a sense of closure to the ordeal. The Carters began rebuilding their lives with the help of the town. Alex found work with Samuel, fixing machinery and helping on the farms. Emily joined Emma at the school, teaching and assisting with the children. Lily, once shy and withdrawn, started to thrive, her laughter filling the house that had once been a place of fear. Hero became a town hero in every sense of the word. Children stopped by the house to play with him, and the local diner even put up a plaque in his honor. But for Hero, the greatest reward was being with his family, watching over them as he always had. On a warm spring afternoon, Clara sat on her porch, watching Hero lying contentedly in the yard. Alex approached, a small gift in hand. For you, he said, handing her a hand-carved wooden figurine of a golden retriever. Clara smiled, tears welling in her eyes. It's beautiful. It's the least we could do, Alex said. You believed in us when we didn't believe in ourselves. As Hero wandered over, Clara knelt beside him, scratching behind his ears. You're the real Hero, she said softly. Hero wagged his tail, his eyes shining with loyalty and love. In that moment, Clara knew that Hero's story wasn't just about one family. It was about a community coming together, about hope and resilience, and about the unbreakable bond between a dog and the people he loved. And in the small town of Willow Creek, where time seemed to move a little slower and hearts beat a little stronger, Hero's legacy would live on forever.